For 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank my colleague from California for yielding. The Baseline Reform Act does nothing to address the economic challenges facing American families. It doesn't create a single job. It does not renew expired unemployment compensation for the millions of workers and their families who are struggling right now. It does not raise the minimum wage to a living wage. What it would do is it would essentially impose sequestration on steroids in our budgetary baseline. And we all pretty much agreed that sequestration was a terrible idea that was holding the country back. The bill in front of us today simply establishes an unrealistic and misleading benchmark against which to measure changes in government spending. Requiring the CBO and the OMB to construct budget baselines without adjusting for inflation will serve only to weaken fiscal discipline and result in wildly inaccurate long-term spending projections. Madam Speaker, inflation is an accepted part of a growing economy. In fact, the United States has seen year-to-year increases in the prices of goods and services over every calendar year but one since 1956, the notable exception being 2009, when our economy was mired in the Great Recession. On average, inflation has hovered near 4% annually over that nearly 6-decade window. It is simply inevitable that goods and services become more expensive over time, and the purchasing power of the dollar will be weaker in 10 years than it is today. Although 2 to 3% annual inflation may not appear to be significant at first blush, rest assured that even such a modest inflationary rate will produce considerable price differences over the long term. Using the Federal Reserve's targeted 2% annual rate of inflation, an item that costs $100 today will cost $122 10 years from now. At 3% annual inflation, that same $100 good will cost almost $135 10 years from now. In total, the price of goods and services in the United States have increased by more than 1,000% since World War II. Under long-standing budget rules, CBO and OMB assume that future discretionary appropriations at the account level will be at the same dollar levels but adjusted for inflation. Now, why do they do this? They do it because it represents a more accurate analysis of our nation's actual spending habits. The aggregate total of defense and non-defense appropriations are then adjusted down to the spending cap levels set in law, but even those spending caps are higher than the freeze mandated by this bill. The CBO's current projection for the next 10 years assumes that discretionary spending will be at caps imposed by the Budget Control Act through 2021 rather than the inflation-adjusted levels. But changing the definition of the budget baseline will have an outsized impact on future budget projections. Discretionary appropriations are responsible for many of the programs that Americans hold sacred. May I have an additional 30 seconds?
I yield the gentleman such time as he may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That Americans hold sacred, including education, veterans benefits, defense, disease research and control, food safety, transportation projects, and the list goes on and on. By eliminating inflation adjustments and freezing discretionary spending over 10 years, the baseline would be a benchmark that builds in real and deep cuts in federal programs. The so-called reforms contained within this bill are nothing more than efforts at constraining future federal spending through budget trickery. I urge a no vote. I yield back the balance of my time.